Hey everyone, can I just take this moment to welcome everybody present in this platform. Maybe I must first start by saying compliments of the year 2026, because I believe it is for the first time that we officially meet since 2025. And on that note, may I also congratulate all of those schools that did well last year, and say to those who did not do well, you have got time to turn the tables around, to change the situation around. Welcome to this very important meeting where we are going to mediate the ATP of 2026 and also try to navigate through the IM reports. But I must emphasize that this mediation is going to focus only on term 1. It means all that we are going to be talking about here are term 1 issues. Even the IM reports, we are going to mediate them, but we mediate IM reports taking into account only term 1 topics. So not all the IM reports are going to be mediated. They are going to be mediated per term. The focus is only on topics that are treated this term. Welcome everybody, and a special welcome to also subject advisors in the district. And if we've got departmental heads in our midst, please feel welcome. And of course, my colleagues from head office who may also have received the link to this meeting. Everybody, you are welcome. But above all, I want to welcome all teachers, because the focus is directed at teachers this afternoon. Let me also start by making a few announcements. The first one is on house rules. By now we know the modus operandi, that under no circumstances should any one disrupt the meetings. You are therefore expected to be cooperative in this platform. And I must say upfront that all participants have been muted, and it has been done deliberately so that the smooth flow of the presentation can take place. If you've got questions, please take note of your questions, and the questions and responses will be attended to at the end of the presentation. If you also feel like posting some questions on the chat box, feel so to do so, but allow the presentation to continue, and then bring your questions, your suggestions, your inputs later on. The second announcement is with regards to the attendance register. The attendance register has been put on the chat box. Please feel welcome to sign the attendance register, because as it is right now, it's live and it will close at 4:30. So make sure that you sign the attendance register before the cutoff time of 4:30, because our meeting is scheduled to end at 4 o'clock, but you have been given 30 minutes grace to complete the attendance register. And I've asked also my colleagues if it's possible to share the attendance register via WhatsApp in our group, so that they can also share it with you teachers there. But most important, make sure that you complete the attendance register. Without any waste of time, the purpose of this meeting is to make sure that we start well. The agreement and the arrangement was this mediation should take place in your district with subject advisors. But we know this was an item during the startup workshops. But we believe startup workshops, many items had to be attended to during the startup workshops. So we believe that you may have gone through this activity, but it was not done to the full, in a sense that there wasn't enough time to do this process. That is why now head office has taken that initiative to make sure that all that was highlighted during your startup workshops with your subject advisors, we now re-emphasize it here and we go much deeper now because it did not get a chance. So there's a platform to also now to go through that process again. And I must also say, apologies for maybe times that were sort of different. The whole idea was not to take you out of the classrooms. That's why the link indicated time of 1400 hours, which is 2 hours, to 2 o'clock, I mean. And this process will carry on until 4 o'clock, which is 1600 hours. You may have received or you may have seen a correspondence that was talking about 1 o'clock, but the link was already had already been sent to schools, so I could not change that time. And above all, I thought maybe 1 o'clock, some of the teachers may still be having 1 or 2 classes to complete before being ready for this platform. So starting this mediation process at 2 o'clock, we felt it, and it's sort of a precise time because everybody must have now finished with their classes. I thought I must just take that out of my way. Now, the outline of the presentation is that we are going to look at the purpose. Why are we doing this? We are also going to focus on 2026 ATP. We'll look at the comparison between paper 1 and paper 2. And when I say paper 1 and paper 2 here, remember this is mediation of internal moderators reports. Now, these internal moderators reports are internal moderators reports of paper 1 and paper 2 in the province, in the Free State. We'll also look at possible reasons for the 2025 results. Now, this 2024-5 results, we are referring to the results of learners in the Free State based on that sample, 100 scripts that were sampled during the marking process that actually informed the internal moderators reports. And I must say, later during the course of this term, we may receive the diagnostic report. Now, the diagnostic report, remember, is now countrywide. It's from the DBE. We have not yet received it. So this one, it's IM report because it's customized to our province. It's based on the performance of learners in our province during that time. But as soon as you get the diagnostic report, you must use them concurrently and use them jointly, because basically they are talking one and the same thing. It's just that with IM reports is customized to the Free State, but with diagnostic report now is countrywide because it takes into account performance of learners across all the provinces in the country. We'll also look at item and error analysis. Those items that learners may have not done well on, what are the errors that they actually committed, and also what are the recommendations to you as teachers? What is it that you are expected to do in trying to avoid that? Because the whole idea is for you now to inform your teaching practice in class as you go through these topics. And we'll also look at subject improvement plan, some of the suggestions that you have to take along after this meeting, which will actually help you to improve your teaching practice and ultimately improve your results. And then we'll conclude our presentation. When we look at the purpose, the first thing, we want to support continuous quality improvement. It means we want to improve on the quality of results, because this diagnostic report or error analysis, it assists you to look at topics or aspects that should have been treated better, and how to go about doing that during your teaching practice. So it is important that you take note that the first purpose of this presentation is to to improve the quality of results at your school. Because if the quality of results improve at your school, the quality of results will improve in your district, and ultimately the quality of results in the province will improve. Secondly, the purpose is to enhance feedback quality. What I'm doing right now, or what the province is doing, that is giving you feedback. We are giving you feedback so that when you've got feedback now, you know exactly what to do. You are better equipped to get inside that classroom and do what is expected of you. Thirdly, to maintain accountability and transparency, we want to give you that information as a way to account, and also as a way to say, this is what actually happened. This is all about transparency in as far as the performance of our learners and our candidates is concerned. Next to that is to improve accuracy of assessment. We want you, when you assess those learners in class, to be now accurate. Now that you should have gone through this mediation process. Next to that, it's also to ensure fairness and consistency. We want, when you treat concept and content in the classroom, you treat it in such a way that you are consistent with the curriculum, and it also has to influence fairness in as far as assessment is concerned. And lastly, the purpose of this mediation process is to make sure that you comply to standards in as far as assessment is concerned, in as far as policy is concerned, in as far as all that is expected, the curriculum in our subject, business studies, is concerned. So I hope you are clear in as far as the purpose of this mediation process is concerned. Coming to the annual teaching plan, you must have received last year Circular E17. It is captured as Circular E17 of 2025. This circular was all about extension of the shelf life of the 2021 National Senior Certificate Examination Guidelines to 2026. What does that mean? It means we've been using the 2021 guidelines since, and there was aim and intention to sort of update examination guidelines, but that process could not be finalized last year. So because of that, this circular is now saying that examination guidelines are still applicable in 2026. The 2021 examination guidelines remain valid and applicable for implementation this year. That you must take into account. And accordingly, the question papers for May, June 2026, remember there's going to be NSC exams for May, June. That examination is going to be based on the 2026 exam guideline. The examination that learners will be sitting for in October, November this year also will be based on the 2021 guideline. And also the May, June 2027 examination will also be based on the 2021 examination guidelines. So I hope you can see the importance of the 2021 examination guidelines, the document that you are still stuck with for now. And because of that, annual teaching plans remain unchanged. It means the ATPs that we were using last year, we are still continuing with those ATPs. Nothing has changed. So you better take that into account. This is with regards to the annual teaching plans. Now coming to the ATP itself. Remember I said the focus is on term 1. According to the ATP, this term, the topic that you must still treat or that you should have treated, because when I look at the ATP right now, business environment, and subtopic is impact of recent legislation. This topic, you must have completed this topic by the 30th of January. So you had 3 weeks to complete this. What is it that is expected of you in as far as impact of recent legislation is concerned? Skills Development Act, including the role of SETAs in supporting this act. I hope you have done justice to that topic, that act. Labor Relations Act, including the rights of employers and employees according to this act. Employment Equity Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, including the provisions of the act. Compensation for Occupational Injuries and Diseases Act. Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act. Differences between BEE and BBBEE. Application of the 5 BBBEE pillars and National Credit Act and Consumer Protection Act, including the rights of consumers in terms of these acts. This is the curriculum. This is what you should have covered and completed by the 30th of January. Or if not, you must still have to go back and make sure that you have covered this. This is what the annual teaching plan is, and assessment will definitely include this impact of recent legislation as it is. The second topic, according to annual teaching plan 2026, is business operations, and the subtopic is human resources. Under human resources, and this is a topic that according to the ATP, you should have started by the 2nd of February, and today is Monday. You must have started the second part of human resources, because according to the ATP, this has been allocated 2 weeks. So you are still busy with this topic of human resources. Under human resources, you are expected to cover recruitment, selection, induction, and placement. All those activities. You are also expected to cover salary determination and fringe benefits or PACs, and also implications of the Labor Relations Act, BCEA, EEA, and Skills Development Act on the human resources function. All this content forms part of human resources, and you must make sure that you have covered all of it. Topic number 3 that you still have to cover this term is business roles, and the subtopic is professionalism and ethics. Under this topic, you are expected to cover the following: ethical behavior, examples of ethical and unethical behavior. You are also expected to cover professional behavior, examples of professional and unprofessional behavior. You are also expected to cover application of the 3 key code principles and types of unethical and unprofessional business practices, And also, lastly, under this topic, you are expected to cover strategies to deal with the types of unethical and unprofessional business practices. All this, you'll find it where? In the 2021 examination guideline. And the next topic, this term, according to the ATP, also business roles, is creative thinking and problem solving. Under this topic, you are expected to cover problem solving and decision making, steps in problem solving, application, and the impact of 4 problem solving techniques. I believe when you go to the examination guideline, you will take note of those 4 techniques. And lastly, you are expected to cover application of creative thinking and advantages of creative thinking. And then lastly, the last topic for this term under business environment is business strategies. Under this topic, you are expected to cover steps in developing a strategy, strategic management process to solve business-related problems, application of the industrial analysis tools, which is SWOT analysis, application of the industrial analysis tools, Porter's 5 forces model, and pestle analysis, different types of business strategies to address business challenges, advantages of each type of business strategy, activities, and lastly, steps in strategy evaluation. This is what you are expected to cover under this subtopic business strategies. It's actually loaded. This is one, and you must do justice. And according to the ATP, you are allocated 3 weeks. 3 weeks for this topic. So plan well and make sure that you. And then when it comes to SBA for grade 12, this term, you still have what case study task, because last year case study was a task to be administered this term. Again, in 2026, there's no change. You are still expected to administer the case study task. And the second task is the control test. You are still expected to administer the control test in 2026. It means SBA tasks for term 1, they are still similar to 2025. Nothing has changed in 2026. And when you look at the SBA weightings, case study task, the term weighting now, for the term, it weighs 25%. And the control test, it weighs 75%. So it shows the importance of these tasks, because the 2 tasks will make sure that your learners at school, they've got their term results for the term. Results for the term will be made up of the control test and the case study. They are the weightings. And then SBA weighting now, this is the annual weighting, because here we did not include other tasks which are administered in other terms. The focus was only on term 1. So it's 10% each SBA weighting annually. That is that about the SBA weightings. Now, when it comes to the 2 papers, paper 1 and paper 2, we've tried to make a comparison between the 2 papers. This comparison is a comparison of candidates of 2024 against those of 2025. When you look at paper 1, for example, 2024, you could see question 1, those learners in the province, they performed at 70%. That was an average performance. And 2025, the performance went even higher, which is 77%. When you go to paper 2, you can also see an improvement. 2024, it was 64%. 2025 was 69%. What does this tell us? It tells us that the performance in question 1, which is section A, is gradually improving. It means there's something that you are doing right there at schools, but you must continue doing it right and even improve further, because if learners can do well in question 1, that serves as an advantage to them already to do better in other questions to follow. When you look at question 2, paper 1, both years, 2024 and 2025, you can see the performance was almost the same. And I must say, question 2 in paper 1 was the least answered in 2024. The same applies in 2025, but we'll talk more about this as we proceed with the presentation. And remember, question 2 in paper 1, that's your business environment. That's where you have your legislation and your strategies. When you look at paper 2, we compare paper 2 now, question 2. In paper 2, you've got business ventures. For question 2, there was a slight improvement. Learners in 2024, on average, they performed at 9%. But in 2025, there was that slight improvement of 14% when it comes to business ventures. So we saw that slight improvement in paper 2. Question 3, we are going to paper 1 again. When you look at question 3, paper 1, question 3 is business operations. Business operations. And the experience and what we have observed over the years is that learners tend to choose this question more, business operations, because that's where you have your human resources. Unfortunately, you also have got your quality, but mainly your business, your human resources. These learners of 2024, on average in the province, they performed at 48%. But last year, look at the performance in 2025. There was a drop from 48 to 35% on business operations. What does that tell us? It says, gone are the days where you as teachers, you are under the impression that, no, HR is easy. Learners do well in HR. Look, the performance in HR, it is actually telling us that even HR that you deem easy and simple for learners are not doing well. When you go to paper 2, question 3, which was also a common question, that is business roles. There was also a drop in paper 1 from 45 to 43%. Question 4, remember question 4, it's basically miscellaneous. Miscellaneous is basically your combination of both topics. In paper 1, you had business environment and business operations. Again, this was a common question chosen and answered by many learners. Look at the performance of these learners. It has dropped from 36 to 30% in paper 1, 2025. We also experienced a similar pattern in paper 2, because question 4, paper 2, it's also a combination of business ventures and business roles. And again, we saw a drop now, especially when you look at this, from 39 to 35%. So question 4, it actually saying something to us also, because if you as teachers, you are encouraging your learners to go for that question and then they answer it more, there is something that is not happening there, because we see a drop in performance in both papers there. Question 5, which is your essays in paper 1. Question 5, look at the performance in 2024. The question was legislation, and it was on Skills Development Act. The average performance was 2%, and even on that one, learners who attempted or chose that question, very few. Last year, from the sample that was taken, not even one candidate answered question 5. That's why we have 0%. So it says this question 5, there is something that is not happening. There is a lot that we have to do. And if we want to really correct the performance in our subject, we must focus on question 5. Why are learners not choosing question 5? And why is the performance, even when they choose it, it's so poor? Look at question 5 in paper 2. Paper 2, question 5, 2024, it was business ventures, and the essay was based on securities. When it comes to 2025, there was a drop from 19 to 10%. 19 to 10%. And the essay for 2025, paper 2, question 5, was on insurance. And we were, when you were asked to give your inputs as as teachers after the learners have written, the feedback that we got was that you were so excited as teachers because of that insurance. You were so excited that learners are going to do well. Insurance is easy, but the performance that we got there is not what was expected. So it is actually also telling us that even topics that you think are easy, they are not as easy as you think, and you must really do justice to them. And then the last question, paper 1, which is the essay, 2024, it was human resources. It was human resources. The performance was 59%. Look at 2025. The question was based on human resources. There was a drop from 59 to 47%. And because of that, look at the performance of paper 1 now, average performance. 2024, it was 54 in paper 1. 2025, it was 46%. There was a drop. So it says, paper 1, there is a need to do something in paper 1. HR performance is not as expected. It did not tell us that HR is easy as you normally say. When you look at paper 2, question 6, 2024, the performance was 44%, and that business roles question was CSI. The performance was 44%. And last year, 2025, there was an improvement from 44 to 51%. And the essay was on human rights, inclusivity, and environmental issues. And normally, this topic is a topic that we feel is a big challenge for us. But the performance was much better as compared to 2024. And on average, when you compare 2025 paper 1 and 2025 paper 2, you could see that on average, paper 2, actually assisted the performance, the overall performance in our subject, and the focus is on people. So for now, when you look at the ATP, it says there are more paper one topics in the ATP. That's why you must focus. We must really do justice if you really have what to improve and change the situation around. I'm going to just flag this information in terms of graphs. For example, when you look at paper one, that's exactly what I've just said, is the information that I've showed you, that question one, the performance was telling us that learners are doing well in section A, but you can look at different topics. There is your human resources that actually dropped. And then this is for paper two, question one again, there it comes up again to say, question one, fairly there is an improvement, continue doing well in as far as paper question one is concerned, because learners are doing well. And you can see that performance of question 6, which is 51%, against question 5. Question 5 was not answered by many, but learners really did not do as expected. So this is what this stats is actually telling us, and we must really work on. Now, let's look at possible reasons for 2025 results. And now these results, I'm actually referring to the results of these learners, 100 sample scripts learners. Section A consisted of 30 marks, consisting of subtopics such as legislation, business strategies, human resources, and quality of performance. Many candidates performed well. This is what I've just said through that. That's why the performance was like this on that sample, section A. Secondly, many candidates did not choose question 2. That's what we observed in paper 1. And question 2 on paper 1, like I said, question 2 on paper 1, that's your business environments, that's your strategies, that's your legislation. And we must interrogate that question. Why are learners not choosing that question? And when you look at that question paper, if you've got the question paper in front of you right now, you'll realize that it had 8 questions. 4 of the 8 questions were based on legislation. They were based on legislation. And then the next bullet, the mark allocation of each sub-question ranged between 4 and 6. That's what you've seen. The maximum marks per question is 6. You don't have a question that was over 6 marks. And scenario questions, they had distractors, and the number of follow-on questions were also reduced in both papers. When you look at scenario questions, there were distractors, and by now you must know that even when you prepare your learners, you must assess them with scenarios that have distractors so that they get used. They are able to eliminate distractors and go for what is actually expected of them as far as the question is concerned. There was also poor performance, which was observed in question 3. I've already made mention of the fact that question 3, paper 1, it was on business operations, and business operations is HR. We thought it was going to be, easy, but unfortunately, the performance was not good. And this question was popular because many learners attempted this question. And then question 3.2 on paper 1. This question was on placement procedure. It was really challenging. Learners did not do well on this question. And then lastly, question 4.5. Here we are talking about paper 1, 4.5. It was also poorly answered. Again, it seems like candidates did not prepare well for personal industrial tools, because question 4.5 was saying recommend ways in which businesses can deal with the challenges posed by the social factor of the personal analysis. The performance was dismal there. This is why the results in paper 1 were like this. Possible reasons continue on paper 1. When you go to the essays now in paper 1, essays were still based on legislation and human resources, like in 2024, 2025. Question 5 was legislation, question 6 was human resources. Many candidates answered question 3, question 4.5, question 4.6, and question 6. We don't know if you have actually advised your learners to answer in that way, but there was that pattern. And the implication of the above findings, they are actually saying legislation and strategies still pose challenges to many learners. And here's the question. What will happen this year, 2026, if the paper can be based on legislation and quality of performance? Are we going to experience a drop in performance? That should not be the case. We are mediating now to say to you, these were the mistakes. This is what happened. This is what transpired. Go and rectify it. As you are treating these topics, make sure that you correct the mistakes and you improve performance. Quality of performance, we know it's a term 2 topic. But remember, the question is saying it can also feature as an essay at the end of the year. And we know, even quality, many learners are struggling to get that right. And if it's legislation which is difficult and quality which is also presumed difficult, does that mean we are going to experience a drop in our results? We don't want to see that. Go and correct that. Moving to paper 2, section A, like I said, it consisted of marks covering all 10 topics in paper 2. We know in paper 2, you have got 10 subtopics, unlike in paper 1, where you've got only 5. But in paper 2, you've got 10 subtopics. Section A was covering that. Secondly, many candidates did not choose question 2, like I said, which was business ventures. Those who attempted answering this question performed well. Those who attempted this question performed well in question 2.1. 2.1 was about factors that should be considered when making an investment decision. And then 2.3 was about the JSE, functions of the JSE. They did well there. And also question 2.6.1, which was about multimedia presentation. Those that selected this question, they did well in that question. And then it appears again that topics such as access was question 2.2 in question 2. And then RSA retail bonds was question 2.7. And forms of ownership was question 2.8. It was a disaster. Learners did not do well in those questions, sub-questions. Many candidates answered question 3, like I've said, also in paper 2. They answered question 3, business roles, and performed well on the following topics: problem solving and King Code principle. Problem solving was question 3.1, which was basically about listing problem solving steps. And then question 3.3 was also about King Code principle. They fairly did well in that question. And then most candidates also answered question 4 and performed well on the following topics. They performed well on management and leadership, and also on CSI focus area. Question 4.3 was the difference between the two concepts, and also focus area was on 4.6, which was corporate social investment. They did well in that question. Continuing with possible reasons for this performance in paper 2, candidates who chose question 5, remember I said not many also answered question 5, and the performance did not come as expected. Those who chose question 5 did not perform as expected. And then on question, we are on essays now. We are going to question 6. On question 6, there was this question: responsibilities of employers in promoting health and safety in the workplace. This was also a disaster. Learners did not answer this question well. Here is a question: what will be the candidate's performance in 2026? Paper 2. If, for example, an essay can be, asked from forms of ownership. Because again, we ask ourselves, why are learners not doing well in forms of ownership? And what will happen should an essay just be purely based on forms of ownership? So this is term 3 topic. Take note of it. Already, we are already telling you that this is a topic that needs attention. You've got time to prepare for that right now as we are mediating. But the focus for now is only on term 1 topics. Right? And then the observation again on essays. Many candidates made attempts on originality by bringing examples in their essays. Positive indeed. We are really excited that many candidates are now beginning to infuse examples, and we want to applaud you for that as teachers, because it is your influence. But we are saying, please do that more and try to guide them. I can tell you right now, in paper 2, there was a script that we marked of one candidate who scored 40 out of 40 in an essay. And that learner, remember, with originality, we want that A learner who brings now, this originality brings that into the classroom. That learner gives life to the content in the classroom. That learner provided actually more than 2 examples per subtopic. And when we checked, those examples were correct. So that learner got 2 marks for originality. It does not happen very often, but it was actually a positive sign, because for years we have been actually concerned about originality in essays. And here is an example. I'm just giving you an example that you can think of. And this presentation, I must tell you that I'm going to share this presentation with your subject advisors, who must actually share this presentation with you. So you'll get this presentation, this that I'm presenting to you. You'll have it at your disposal. Now, with originality, here is an example. Take a topic, term 1 topic on strategies. A topic is on strategies, and a question is posed like, how personal factors pose challenges to businesses. A very relevant example that can earn marks for learners would be what is currently happening. US tariffs that are hitting South African companies very hard. And remember, the question is how this pose challenges to businesses. And personal factors, we've got different factors there. And this can actually apply to two. For example, your economic factor. With economic factor, with the US tariffs on South African companies, currently, you're in the automotive industries, your motor industries, South African, factories such as BMW and Mercedes-Benz, they export millions of vehicles and parts to US every year. How does this pose a challenge, the problem of tariffs? It means the new tariff means that these companies now will face high production costs, making it harder for them to compete with manufacturers from other countries not facing such tariffs. This is how this poses a challenge to this economic factor. This can also apply to a political factor, because when you look at US tariffs, those are political decisions taken by the US government, and they also have got an impact on South African companies. And this is what is actually currently happening. It's recent. If a learner brings this to the essay, it's a perfect way of infusing an example to the essay relevant to what is being asked. I hope this also assists, because sometimes when you talk of originality, some teachers, they are also saying, but you are not guiding us on how we must go about doing that. But remember, originality, you just guide your learners, but it's up to the learners to bring those examples. Guide them, and they must bring more. You can't give them examples, because they've got to be original. I think I've touched this enough. Let's now go to the item and error analysis of first term topics. And we are going to start with paper 1 and paper 2. Section A. Here the focus was on section A. My apologies, in the two papers. Excuse me. Section A. When we look at section A, like I said, the performance was well in both papers. However, what are the common errors? What is it that we have observed is that in both papers, learners performed well. However, in paper 1, learners did not do well on questions that were from business environments. There it comes again that you must still do justice to business environments, because when you look at question 1.1.1, it was based on legislation, and you find learners actually did not do well. And you also go to, for example, 1.3, because you are thinking of section A in general. 1.3.1 was on legislation also. So learners did not do well on questions from business environment. And remember, section A, it covers all the topics. And then question 1.2. Now, when you look at question 1.2 in the two papers, question 1.2 in the two papers is that question where learners are provided with statements, and they must complete those statements with the words provided. What is it that we have observed? And these are just silly mistakes. Some learners did not follow the instructions. Instead of using the words provided, they gave their own words. And remember, if they gave their own words, they forfeit marks. What is it that we are recommending? We are recommending that regular informal assessment using this question must be used. Assess them more. You've got previous papers, so that they get used to this instruction. I can cite an example, for example, in paper 2 on question 1.1. there was a word in the box, force field analysis, and they had to provide force field analysis as a response. It was a response, let me just see, to question 1.2.4. Question 1.2.4 was saying businesses implement the necessary changes after considering the driving and restraining aspect. This refers to, the word was fault field analysis problem solving technique. Some candidates, instead of saying force field analysis, they were simply saying force field. And remember, that analysis is key. And they were forfeiting marks for that. So these are just mistakes that you must guard against. Advise your learners. And then still on section A, question 1.1 and 1.3. Remember, 1.1 is your multiple choice, and then 1.3 is the columns where they are provided with 2 columns and they must match. And normally, they've got to write the number of the question and the letter. Some learners forfeited marks for providing more than one answer in these questions. I mean, if they are not sure of the answer, they will say 1.3.1 B stroke C or B and E. I'm just making an example. And these are just silly mistakes that should be avoided, that we don't want learners to do. Multiple choice and match columns should be used frequently by teachers in school. So we are actually saying to you, informal assessment. You can come up with informal assessment, trying to correct this behavior, trying to getting your learners used to this type of assessment. You've got previous papers. Let them answer section 8 questions, multiple choice, match, and so on. And when you are sure that now they can answer, then you can focus on the content, but they should actually master the technique of answering this question. This was what was common in both papers because it's section A, which is question 1. Now, going specifically now to paper 1. On paper 1, we are now focusing on term 1 topics for paper 1, which are legislation and strategies. The first question there, which was question 2.1, paper 1. This question was based on leave types according to BCEA. The performance was good. Good performance was noted in this question, even though some candidates provided a response like family leave. And remember, responsibility is key to that. They can't just say family leave. There's got to be family responsibility leave as a type of leave. So they were committing, some of the learners were committing these errors, and we want you to guard against that. Now, as teachers, you are advised to provide detailed recent description of each type of leave when you deal with this content. As per the 2025 NSC marking guideline and updated notes, this content must be assessed in both direct and indirect questions, including essays, essay type questions. This is a corrective measure. And then still on paper 1, question 2.2 was on the role of sitters. This question is not, this question it has matured. It's been there. It has been there. Outline the role of sitters in supporting the Skills Development Act. Learners were confusing the role of sitters with the purpose of Skills Development Act. The corrective measure, you as a teacher, make sure that the two roles, role of sitters and purpose of Skills Development Act, make sure that you clearly explain and differentiate them considering the notes. That will help you. The next question, paper 1, question 2.3, it was on Porter's 5 forces. Question 2.3, and it was a scenario. Common errors. Some candidates could not identify the force, and or the others, they even gave an incomplete answer in 2.3.1, because the question in 2.3.1 said identify the force of Porter's 5 forces model that is applicable to BF. That was in the scenario. They were struggling to identify it correctly. And then others wrote power of competition instead of power of competitors. In question 2.3.2, it was a follow-on question. Candidates were able to come up with headings because the question said, describe how businesses could apply one other force. One other force of Porter's 5 forces model to analyze their position in the market environment. They were able to come up with that, but they were unable to apply because the question was how they could apply other force. So question 2.3 was also problematic. The corrective measure or the recommendation is that you must use more scenario questions. And you must first explain each Porter's 5 force, explain each force, and then show how they can be applied. And focus should also be on what drives the prices to go up or down. And they should also know that businesses, owners apply this model to position themselves in the market environment. Also make use of practical examples in this regard. It does not help to simply teach this content theoretically. Bring examples for learners to understand better. Still on paper 1, strategy evaluation 2.4. There was a question on strategy evaluation. Some candidates confused steps of evaluating strategies with problem-solving steps covered in paper 2. Candidates were expected to perform well in this question, and it has been assessed previously. That was the expectation. It was this question, you go to previous papers, it has been there, whether it's in section A, in fact, section B, or even section C. That was the expectation, but you still had learners who were confusing. The corrective measure is that make use of practical examples. The other recommendation is that make use of role plays or even demonstrations in class. Just bring life into your class. Don't just teach by textbook. Demonstrate all of those. And learners must be taught the importance of evaluating strategies to stimulate interest on how businesses discharge this process. The next topic or concept was intensive strategies. Question 2.5. Question 2.5 was saying, discuss any 2 types of intensive strategies. A lot of candidates were able to mention the strategies because the question said discuss any 2, but they were not able to discuss them. Others, they confuse intensive strategies with integration strategies. Now, as a teacher, you are now encouraged that you must talk to your learners and encourage them to first have an in-depth knowledge of the 3 types strategies. In fact, intensive strategies, not diversive, intensive strategies, so that they can understand the advantages of these strategies, it is important that you go deeper into each strategy and make sure that you differentiate. There is that clear difference between this strategy and that strategy. And unfortunately, when you look at this topic of strategies, it's treated towards the end of the term. And I don't think most teachers, they give enough attention, or they, you as teachers, you give much time to this topic. And because you don't give much time, that's why you end up encouraging them not to answer it, even in a case of a test. And remember, by simply doing that, you are actually saying to your learners, they must put away that topic, because when you move to the next term, you are starting other topics. They are forever not going to do well in this topic because the damage is done already in term 1. So these topics for term 1 are very, very crucial. The next question was on application of BBBEE pillars 2.7. Explain ways in which business can apply ownership as a pillar. Ownership. You see, that pillar was provided. Many candidates could not explain how this could be applied. Others, they confused ownership as a pillar with management, because you also have got management as a pillar. They were confusing them. You are encouraged to first explain different BBBEE pillars. Take each pillar by pillar and show how then they can be applied, and also using practical examples. This will help you to clarify this confusion in as far as this content is concerned. Still on paper 1, legislation and strategies. You can see the bigger portion of this presentation focuses on legislation and strategies, because you look at the ATP legislation, it covers 3 weeks. Strategies covers 3 weeks. So it goes without saying that these two topics, they cover the bigger portion of content in term 1, and they form part of paper 1. So you must really make sure that you do well in this content when you treat it. Advantages of diversification strategies 2.8. Question was saying, advise businesses on the advantages of diversification strategies. Some candidates forfeited marks for incomplete responses, while others explain the advantages of intensive strategies instead of diversification strategies. You see, they were confusing strategies now. Others' response were based on the types of diversification strategies which did not form part of the required response. A corrective measure is that learners must know that advantages of intensive strategies are embedded in each type of intensive strategy, because you've got 3 types of intensive strategies, and the advantages, because the question is about advantages of diversification strategies. All the advantages, they are embedded in each type of diversification, intensive strategies. You as teachers must show the relationship between the types of intensive strategies. You must also make sure that you show the types of diversification strategies and the advantages of these strategies. Learners must be encouraged to explain or to give examples of strategies and explain how they benefit business. You see, when you give it to the learners, because remember, you've got advantages of intensive strategies, you also have got advantages of diversification strategies. But within each type of strategy, within diversification strategies, there are different types. Within intensive strategies, there are different. So if you don't take this and try to go strategy by strategy, your learners are likely to confuse and make use of examples so that they clearly differentiate between all these types of strategies, and by so doing, they'll be able now to provide advantages. And then defensive strategies on 4.1, question 4.1, types of defensive strategies. You still had learners, some learners, who provided a response such as divestment and not divestiture. And we know by now that that response is not acceptable. And types of strategies, these defensive strategies, that are there in the 2021 examination guideline. You are expected to teach taking into account the 2021 examination guideline. This will provide clarity on the 3 types of defensive strategies. Still on legislation and strategies, strategic management process. Question 4.1. We said this question is common. It has been common. It has matured, but the performance is also not forthcoming. Some candidates confuse strategic management process with either the steps in strategy evaluation or problem-solving steps. Some candidates repeated facts on option 1 and option 2 on the strategic management process. We know in the notes we've got option 1 and option 2. The corrective measure there is that teachers, you are now advised to focus on the first option, because the first option of the strategic management process, it provides a detailed description of this process. And this option, it also enables learners to understand the reason why business must formulate and implement different business strategies. This does not mean they will be penalized for using option 2, but this is a corrective measure that we are recommending. And then 4.4, the impact. There was a question here of the impact of QUADA. Recommend, in fact, discuss the impact of QUADA on businesses. Most candidates confuse the impact of QUADA with the responsibilities of employers and employees in safety in paper 2. This was just a confusion. 4.4, the impact. US teachers must focus on the purpose of QUADA. Focus on the purpose first, and then lay the foundation for proper understanding of this act. Then demonstrate the impact of this using practical examples. You can't run away from examples. The moment you bring examples, clarity will be there. So it's important when you try to correct this error, you follow what I've just said. Bring examples to demonstrate that. Still on paper 1, legislation and strategies. Like I said, the bigger portion of this presentation focuses on legislation and strategies because they form part of term 1 topics. Ways to deal with challenges posed by social factor. This is the question I spoke about earlier on. A very poorly answered question. And it seems like candidates did not prepare well for this question. Corrective measure. Learners must refrain, because this is what we also observed. Learners are giving examples of each pestle factor. And the question is actually saying how this factor pose challenges to business. I even gave an example right now when it comes to originality, how you can handle this in as far as the essays are concerned. Learners must refrain from giving examples of each pestle factor as a focus, as the focus is on how each factor poses challenges to business. They must also be able to link the recommendations with each challenge. US teachers must ensure that this question is marked accordingly to the national marking principles. And you must also initiate class discussions for suggestions on how to deal with challenges and make use of examples and demonstrations. This will clearly make content, easier to learners because you are making use of examples, and there's many examples that you can use. 5.3, this was now an essay, purpose of Employment Equity Act. Many candidates' responses were based either on the impact. Then the question is about the purpose, but here the learners bringing impact instead of bringing the purpose. And this challenge, it is also persistent despite recommendations from previous diagnostic reports. The recommendation is that teach this using a table to clarify the distinct feature of each act. Take all the acts, make use of a table, let each act be, be explained briefly by each candidate, and then thereafter try to come up with the purpose of each. Take a table that will actually assist them not to confuse, and also bring examples to clarify. This will assist because they will know the purpose of each act. Still on legislation, this was now on question 5. The impact. Some candidates explain the act. You see what they are doing now. They are explaining the act, and the question is about the impact. They're explaining the act instead of the impact. Others wrote content that belong under the business, how the business can comply with the act under the impact. They were confusing content. Corrective measure here is that, remember, with impact, there should also be positives and negatives. Positives and negatives are crucial. And then learners should be taught that the main aim of Employment Equity Act is to eliminate discrimination and promote equal opportunities and fair treatment in the workplace. In order to assist learners to understand the impact of this act on businesses, the purpose of this act must be taught. You see, now you can see the order. That's why we start with the purpose first. You can't start with the impact before the purpose. You must start with the purpose first. And then that will lead you to the impact of the act. You are also advised to identify key concepts that are mentioned in the purpose. In those papers, highlight key concepts that can assist learners to be able to understand this better. And then still on essays, ways to comply with Employment Equity Act. Poor performance was also noted here, as many candidates had difficulty in responding to ways in which businesses could comply with the Employment Equity Act. The corrective measure is that reference to the examination guidelines and updated notes should be made during teaching and learning. The content order in the examination guideline, this is what I've just talked about, the content order. In the examination guideline regarding legislation should be followed is the purpose, impact, and then ways to comply with the act. That will help them be able to answer as expected when it comes to legislation. And then lastly, on legislation and strategies, penalties for non-compliance with the act. Candidates did not perform well in this question also, as responses were based on either non-compliance with QUEDA or purpose of this act, instead of penalties for non-compliance. As common response to this question was business may close down. You know, a lot of learners, business may close down, business may close down, business may close down. What is the corrective measure? Learners must be made aware that penalties for non-compliance with each act are punitive. You know, the business will be punished for that. They are punitive in nature, and that businesses may lose a lot of money on heavy fines and legal costs. They must also understand that penalties for non-compliance with each act are not the same. You see, they are not the same. Now they are now confusing. And this is penalties for non-compliance with Employment Equity Act. That will not be the same with penalties for non-compliance with Labor Relations Act. So it depends on the nature and the context of each act. Make that clear when you treat this content. And then on paper 1, we are now moving to another topic, which is HR. Remember, HR is also treated in term 1. HR, I talked about this. Question 3.2, which was on placement procedure. Candidates had difficulty to distinguish between the meaning of placement and the placement procedure. Some gave responses that were relating to selection procedure. Learners must be made to realize that placement procedure takes place after recruitment and selection procedures. And teachers, you must emphasize the fact that businesses are responsible for assigning employees to a specific job where they will function properly. And I mean, bring examples, make use of examples to demonstrate this. This will help a lot. This was actually a challenge to many learners. Implications of Labor Relations Act, question 3.3. Question 3.3. Implications, yes. 3.3.2. Implications of Labor Relations Act on human resources function. Some candidates gave responses relating to the purpose of Labor Relations Act instead of implications. Implications of Labor Relations Act on human resources functions are in line with the ways in which businesses should comply with this act. If you can also, when you teach that, because implications have to do with ways in which the business can comply this content before teaching the content. And then reasons for the termination of employment contract 3.4. Question 3.4. Reasons. Advise businesses on the reasons for the termination of an employment contract. Most candidates were able to provide the headings to describe the reasons. You know, they would simply mention, the heading, but without the reason. And this might be because of the DBE textbook. When discussing exam strategies on employment contracts, this is a corrective measure. It must be made clear to learners that the reasons for termination must be explained to obtain full marks. Make it clear to them that all reasons, they must explain them in full to obtain full marks. It must also be pointed out that this content is assessed either in section B or section C because full sentences are expected. You as teachers, you should penalize your learners for vague or incomplete responses so that they could refrain from such practices in examinations. This is a corrective measure that we are recommending to you. Still on HR, the purpose of induction, 4.6. 4.6. This question was on the purpose of induction. There was poor performance. It was recorded in this question because candidates' responses were based on the aspects, instead of the purpose, they were bringing the aspects to be included in the induction program, Others were also talking about the benefits of induction instead of the purpose. They always confuse the two. Learners must first understand the purpose of induction before unpacking the benefits. You teachers must explain the relationship between the purpose and the benefits of induction, focusing on how induction benefits both new employees and the business itself. Assessment on this topic should cover both direct and indirect questions. This is a corrective measure that we are recommending. And then recruitment procedure 6.2. This was an essay, and we expected learners to do well, but to our surprise, some candidates provided incomplete responses, although they were expected to write in full sentences. Others, they confused recruitment procedure with selection procedure. You teachers, you should emphasize, this is a corrective measure, the key concepts which distinguish the recruitment and the selection procedures. That is, recruitment focuses on finding suitable candidates for the vacancy, while selection focuses on choosing and appointing a suitable candidate. Using visual aids such as flowcharts, diagrams will assist learners to have a better understanding of the sequential nature of these activities. And you can also make use of role plays or demonstrate, those procedures also in class. Still on HR, the impact of internal recruitment on businesses. 6.3, this was an essay. The performance was good in this question, but some candidates confused the impact of internal recruitment with the impact of external, mixing the two. Learners must first be aware or made aware that the meaning of internal and external recruitment should be good. It means make learners aware of the meaning of the two. What does internal mean and what does external mean? So that they can understand the differences. And thereafter, learners should be provided with newspapers, articles, and magazines extracts on various sources of recruitment, and request them to classify these sources either as internal or external recruitment with a motivation. This is just a suggestion that we are giving to you, but it can help you. It can help clear that confusion that is normally done by learners. And then this one, 6.4, on the role of the interviewer. During the interview, some candidates, they confuse the role of the two, the role of the interviewer with the interviewee sometimes. Some, they would even bring the role of the interviewer, during instead of, before. So they always confuse all those. And even this, just make a demonstration. This is a corrective measure that we are recommending. Make a demonstration in class. You can make a demonstration or role play. Learners must understand the difference between the interviewer and the interviewee. The two, the applicant and the employer. The interviewer and the interviewee before proceedings to the role of each party. You teachers, you can also use 3 columns approach where you outline the role of the interviewer before and during the interview, and emphasize the role of the interviewee is only during the interview. When you receive this document, please take note of these corrective measures to help you improve your teaching practice. And then legal requirements, 6.6. This question is also an old question. Some candidates provided aspects, because this question was on the legal requirements of an employment contract. They provided aspects instead of the legal requirements. Learners' response on the legal requirements of the employment contract should focus on what the employment contract, a legal document, and not on the aspects that should be included in the employment contract. You must focus on the role of the employer and the employee in the contract. US teachers and learners must be requested to link some aspects of the employment contract with the legal requirements so that they are able to formulate full sentences on this content. And they are able to, to draw a clear distinction between the two. Legal aspects, in fact, a contract aspect of a contract, and also legal requirements. Make sure that you clarify that. This is actually a question that has matured for some time. And now going to another topic for paper 2 on ethics and professionalism. This was King Code principle. Question 3.3.1. A well-answered question. However, some candidates could not correctly identify. They could not correctly identify the King Code principle from the scenario, and they confused responsibility with accountability. This was also a scenario. You teachers, you are advised to focus on the King Code principle as stated in the 2021 examination guidelines, and learners must be exposed to various source-based questions and scenarios on this content. Still on this question of ethics and professionalism, the concept or the topic dealing with pricing of goods in rural areas, 4.9. Most candidates had difficulty in responding to this question. They provided general and vague responses, such as selling cheap products on ways in which businesses could deal with pricing of goods in rural areas as a type of unethical business practice. Some responses were based on challenges posed by pricing in rural areas. Now, what is the recommendation? An in-depth analysis of challenges posed by each type of unethical business practice should be done so that learners may be able to recommend ways in which businesses could deal with each type of unethical business practice. Just go to your examination guideline and look at all of those unethical business practices. The first thing you must, explain how they pose challenges. And if they can deal with that question properly, they'll be able now to deal with this question of how businesses can deal with that now. The focus should be on a positive strategies, because this is how business can deal. The focus should be on positive strategies that will benefit both the business and the customers living in rural areas. Learners can be requested to conduct research on how businesses can deal with types of unethical or even unprofessional business practice. So you can also do it practically, but it will help you clarify this content to the learners. And now going to another topic for paper 2, but a topic that is treated in term 1, which is creative thinking and problem solving. This was question 3.1. Learners did well in this question. It was on problem solving steps. Many candidates were able to list the problem solving steps, even though some confuse these steps with either problem solving techniques or conflict resolution steps. Others also brought up the elements of strategies in this question. Now, learners must be told that there are similarities between problem-solving steps and strategic management process in terms of formulating, implementing, and monitoring the strategy. However, the problem-solving steps, they focus on how businesses can solve problems, while the strategic management process focuses on developing suitable strategies to respond to challenges posed by business environments. if you can clarify that, it makes it easier for them to grasp and understand. And still on creative thinking and problem solving, nominal group technique 3.7. This question was based on the impact. Evaluate the impact of nominal group technique. Learners did not do well on this question. Many candidates provided vague and incomplete responses to the impact of nominal group technique in the workplace. Some responses had to do with application of the technique rather than the impact. Learners must first be taught the technique itself before knowing the impact. So explain the technique first and make sure that they understand what the technique is all about. Make use of examples before they can go to the impact. And when they know the impact, now they can be able to do what? To go even further. They can even show how the technique can be applied. Because a question on the application of the technique can also come. But make sure that order is followed for them to understand. You can also make use of practical examples and demonstrations. All this, they will enhance learners' understanding of this concept or content. Still on creative thinking and problem solving, ways businesses can create an environment that promotes creative thinking. This is an old question also. And when you look at this question 4.8, it was a scenario. Some learners could not code ways because those ways were put in a scenario. They could not code. Some even provided an incomplete code without an essence, while others provided a distractor as a response. And remember what I said, familiarize your learners. Make use of scenario questions and put distractors there so that they're able to see, because this is the way to go now. All scenarios will have distractors. Many candidates provided vague and incomplete responses. Some responses were based on advantages of creative thinking in the workplace. Some learners also made use of content from the scenario. So there were just a lot of mistakes, errors committed on this question. Corrective measure is that more scenario questions should be used very often in informal assessment. And then ways in which business can create an environment that promotes creative thinking in the workplace should not be confused with advantages of creative thinking. Remember, ways to create refers to a specific technique that can be used to actively encourage the generation of new ideas. For example, brainstorming. While advantages are the positive outcomes that result from being able to think creatively. So just clarify that to the learners for them not to make mistakes when it comes to this question. And then on essays, lastly, both paper 1 and paper 2. Now we are talking about common errors on essays, 5.1, 5.6, and 6.1, 6.6. These are based on introduction and conclusion. Some candidates forfeited marks for introduction and in conclusion, as they could not link the statements with the question. Some were also using the preamble for this purpose, and they also lost marks because of that. It's a common error. By now, we are not expecting learners to really forfeit marks when it comes to these two. When it comes to introduction and conclusion, you teachers, you should teach learners as early as in grade 10. When we visit schools, we always pick this pattern where informal assessment in the form of essays in your lower grades, your grade 10 and 11, is not as high as in grade 12. It means at your schools, you already caused this damage from grade 10. And the recommendation is that as early as in grade 10, let your learners get through the use of, in fact, let your learners be introduced to how they should formulate proper introductory statements and proper concluding statements for their essays in grade 10 and also in grade 11. When they're in grade 12, it should just be smooth sailing. This is a recommendation, and learners must be trained on how to write the introduction and the conclusion based on any 4 sub questions that were asked in the question paper. So you can assess your learners, just assess them on any question. Here are the 4 bullets, come up with an introduction, come up with a conclusion for that. That will help you a lot. And you've got previous question papers and marking guidelines that can also assist you in as far as that is concerned. But this way, actually common errors when it comes to essays in both papers. And then for your subject improvement plan, these are just what we are also recommending to you at school, because we want you to improve performance this term. Make sure that you still have got notes, but remember there are addendums from 2025 NSC exams. Those addendums should be used to update little content if there's something that has been added more in your notes. Update those notes using the addendum. Secondly, explain the meaning of concepts in each lesson. You can't get into a class, start a lesson without explaining concepts that you are going to introduce there. Identify keywords in each topic that will assist learners to remember facts. Anytime you get to a class, you present a topic, have those keywords that can assist learners to remember the facts. Teaching and learning should be informed by Grade 12 2021 guideline and updated notes. I cannot, overemphasize that fact that 2021 guidelines, they are still in implementation and applicable in 2026. Explain to learners notes number 9, 10, 12.1.1, and 12.1.2, number 13, and 14.1. These are the notes in the marking guidelines. You can just go to your marking guideline and look at those notes. Explain those notes to them, because it will help them to respond as expected in their assessment. You can also invite your subject advisors or the coordinator into your classrooms. This one, it happens normally during your camps or whatever, but there's nothing stopping you from inviting them just to come and help you. Administer regular informal assessment tasks and provide feedback immediately to learners. Sometimes when we visit schools, we pick this also pattern that can also help you, that some learners, in fact, not learners, some teachers, they do not mark